Spring is in the air. The legislative season is about to wrap up. This is Heidi Hatch with KUTV 2 News, joined by, I'm trying to push all the buttons at the same time, Mara Carabello from the Ixora Group and John Dougal with 2 L's on the other seat here today.
All of me, that's right.
All of me, Friggle Dougal here. Glad everyone is in the house today. We have some fun conversations. I feel like during the legislative session, we need to be concentrating specifically on the legislative session. But we are filing lawsuits, filing appeals. Exactly. There's so much going on. So we're going to talk local, national, and everything in between today. Getting out and enjoying some sunshine today.
60 degrees today. It is spring. That's 3 days of winter and 1 day of snow. I mean,
it was something. We need water, but it is. I already said I put on a cotton jacket to walk, and it was just too hot.
I know. I was at Pioneer Park this morning, and I figured it would be chilly, and I just had my blazer on, and I was starting to sweat. I was like, what is this feeling? I love it. Mm-hmm. So here we go. I think it is going to get cold for a few minutes again. And I never got to that hardened, like, winter, you know, when you get used to winter feeling, because it never got cold here. I'm headed to New York in a few days, and I'm really worried for myself because it's cold there, and I haven't become cold-blooded yet. So
is everything still encased in ice?
I think so, unfortunately.
Best wishes.
Are you working or playing?
Playing, and I've never actually been to New York City for fun. I've only been there for work before, so this is a strange feeling for me.
Have fun.
Yeah. So
you're going to see the sights? What are you going to do?
My mom's 75th birthday, so we're going to go watch some Broadway shows with all the girls in the family. So, yeah.
Very nice.
Good stuff.
Enjoy.
Hopefully nothing crazy ensues, but you never know. I want to start off, this feels like a year ago already, but we had the State of the Union this week, if you remember. I know. And it was kind of interesting.
If you remember. I mean, how many hours of that did we live through?
A lot. I think he broke his own record to an hour and 48 minutes. But if we're being completely honest, I think that this felt less long than when he's spoken before, because I feel like there was a lot going on and a lot to watch. So
quite the show,
yes,
man.
I want to get your takes on this, but I wanted to mention really quickly that Utah kind of got a couple mentions throughout this. Senator Mike Lee's Save America Act received a standing ovation there at the State of the Union. We'll talk more about that, but it looks like
standing ovation, partially standing ovation.
Democrats were not helping out with that. Blake Moore got a sort of shout out as the guy in the third row who named the Trump accounts.
He got a shout out for being tall.
Yeah, for being tall. So Trump remembers his face. He knows he worked with him, but he can't remember his name. We had Clayton Keller there.
But he named an account after me, so I like him.
So our mammoth, he's the captain, Clayton Keller, who just returned from the Olympics, was there too. So all kinds of Utah representation. Mara, you first on this for this very long speech. Did you find it to be something that worked for you or worked for the American people, or were you like, this was not my kind of dog and pony show?
So I'm going to end this by saying something epic happened to me. So I'll finish there.
Wow.
But I will say, for me, the emotional highs were what you saw with community coming in. Some medal honor recipients, some Purple Hearts, some Olympians, and that you did see the entire body responding to, and it was pretty emotional. I think it is egregious that I don't think it was a State of the Union. I think it was a state of Donald Trump's feelings about himself. And so I, to be honest, didn't make it all the way through. I wanted to, I was committed to, but
Did you DVR
so
the rest?
It
was boring. I did, and I didn't go back to watch it. I couldn't do it. And
could you double speed, right?
I was like, I can't do it because I got the gist of it. You're the best. So, I think it's outrageous that you are on the brink of sending a significant part of our military to the Middle East and you don't speak of it. I mean, there wasn't any substance there. So I found it to be a campaign rally, but here was the breakthrough, and I'm feeling pretty good about this.
Okay. Where did he break through? Where did he make you tear up and feel a little emotion inside?
He didn't make me angry. He bored me.
Okay.
So usually, hats off to Donald J. Trump, he usually makes me angry. And that's his secret weapon, is that he can evoke. And I, for the very first time, was just like, yawn. I had heard it all. I heard the shtick. He was vitriolic. He was mean-spirited. He us and them. He named called. But he's done it too many times for me. I finally was like, yawn, yawn. Oh, you hate them. Oh, you like yourself. Oh, wait, you hate them. Oh, you like yourself. So for the very first time, I will say, I was bored's too strong probably, but he has lost his ability to push my buttons for that moment. Let's not make that too universal. But that's what was very different is usually I have to like get up for listening to him because I don't find him substantive. This was a campaign speech. It was so expected. His name calling was so expected. His taking credit was so expected. So high points for the Americans that he pointed out. But my big breakthrough was I kind of just was bored.
Okay. Did you find yourself equally bored, or did you find yourself in a moment where you're like, ooh, that was a good one. I'm glad you saved that one up for this.
Yeah, so I'm going to note that, just full disclosure, I'm not a fan of State of the Unions. I don't care who it is. It's just too much of a laundry list of I'm going to hand out all these benefits.
So you want to go back to the days of writing a letter?
Well, yeah, writing a letter was nice. I actually wondered who's going to be the first one to actually just produce it in a glossy video.
Ooh.
You know?
Or an anime.
Well, yeah. AI enhanced, something like that.
Nothing wrong with cartoons.
But so I'll just disclose, I'm a policy wonk, and State of the Unions don't get into policy. They're just broad. I want to do X, Y, Z without the depth. And so it's not about any particular person. But given that, I mean, I will describe, you were bored, but for a lot of folks, his fan base, you know, he's the ultimate entertainer. He engages them. And at the end of the day, if nobody takes anything else away, it's, hey, look at the awesome things I'm doing.
For sure.
And the Democrats are crazy.
For
that's
sure.
the takeaway that he gave folks.
Yeah. But it's every time. That's always the punchline. So that's for me where it was just incredibly expected. And you are so right. He loves his base. And I say, you know, you and the 23%, you knock yourselves out because I think that's about where the base is. And I think everything else was to be expected. Plus, come on, an hour 50.
That is
That's
a long time.
talking.
It is long.
And we thought Clinton was long. But
Yeah.
there was a lot of, you know,
He was a policy guy when he did his long
You're a
though.
hero, and you're a hero. And we had a lot of heroes recognized.
We
as part of
did.
this.
Yeah.
We did.
One thing I thought was interesting is that some of the Democrats didn't attend. They had a dog and pony show that was literally a dog and pony show.
Yeah.
That was weird outside. I don't know that we need to discuss that. I was like, what the heck is going on?
I missed that.
You didn't? They had like animals on stage. It was just strange. Did you catch any of
Yeah,
it?
you
It's
just
like, why are
don't
we
go
doing
head
this?
to head in Crazy Town is where I'm like,
No.
Dems, what are you doing? You're just trying to be as nutty as Donald Trump is? That's not an aspiration.
Yeah, I thought interesting though. The Democratic response was a lot better than we've seen.
Yeah.
When I think of the Democratic response, I think of poor old Marco
You're
Rubio.
saying it was actually saying-
Yeah, when he was chugging the water and he was getting stressed. They always put him in a room by themselves and they're sweating bullets because they know there's a lot of pressure. And then we had, I can't even remember her name, in her kitchen. I'm like, why do we put the woman in her kitchen? So I was impressed this time that Democrats put Virginia's Governor Spanberger in a room with other people so there were other humans to react to her. Mara, did you like what they did with her?
Yeah, I thought she did really well. I thought it was a really good juxtaposition to have a governor right now, super smart, and she has got her act together, and she won in a really centrist fashion. So I thought she was the right spokesperson.
I think they tried, but at the end of the day, nobody pays attention to it.
Oh, yeah,
So-
for sure. This is all inside baseball for inside baseball, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the response is like, what? I'm going to go back to State of the Union where I think the Democrats made a mistake was when, what was it, about half of them skipped the event. And so therefore the opposition didn't look as strong because half of them were missing.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were a lot missing this year as well.
I would go back to, it's probably been since the early 2000s since we've actually had a time where we had everyone in there, and I think abiding by the decorum rules, which we used to remember, and I guess was part of that chamber, and the respect, no matter who the president was up there, you weren't screaming at them. Republicans have done it. Democrats did it this time. There's people who don't show up. But I kind of miss the old-fashioned days where you went in there, you knew the president, whoever was in power was going to give their speech. You could golf clap, you could not clap. But I just feel like it's turned into reality TV where there's screaming back and forth and then blame afterwards, being we'd never do that. And then you pull up the videos from the year before and say, okay, your side did do that. That part I'm like,
that part I don't like.
You fact-checking things. There you go, news
I
media.
know.
And we do it in a chirpy way. If we're going to do it, let's full on British Parliament, right? Let's all stand up.
That's what I
and
was
start
thinking, like,
haranguing
really
at
go
each
for it.
other. Yeah.
But that's the thing. We like ran away from the British Parliament and the king, and we were going to do it differently. And now we're not doing it differently. We're just trying to compete in a different way. So here we are. If you're following along with the drama every day of the counting of the verified signatures in the Prop 4 repeal, we are officially at, as of 9 o'clock this morning, 157,898, which surpasses the statewide total they need. The question now is, are we dialed into where we need to be in the districts? with the final word, I have not personally looked this up because as of this morning, they were 8 verified signatures shy in Senator Adams' district. But Robert Gerke with the Tribune called Davis County, and they're now up by 48 there. But that is a really, really slim margin, Mr. Dougal, if you're looking at it, because there's still another 45 days where those
Not
verifications.
quite 45 days, but a 45-day period.
Yeah, 45 since the last signature where they can take those signatures off. So it's hard to say how many will remove, but it looks like this might all hang on Senator Adams' district.
Well, I mean, if you're going to fight this, I thought the Republicans are going to get, the Republican Party is going to get the signatures. But the question is going to be how many are going to remove, and you're going to go after those that are on the bubble. All you got to do is knock off one of the 26 Senate districts, and you've blocked it. And so you're going to put all your effort in one or two areas to really try and remove your signature.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, the group running the rescission campaign, smart. They're sophisticated campaigners. They know the distribution. They'll likely go after a couple of Senate districts that are the closest.
Yeah.
And you have to build and build and build and build, and you go one below the line and you don't qualify with the distribution, right? So
which is interesting to see.
It's really interesting. You're seeing. Again, it's hard for me to not express my satisfaction level with the GOP being strung up with laws and rules that
they have to live by the laws they pass.
That they have been supporting. And the rescission campaign was aggressively put into law over a couple of cycles as punishment for ballot measures that the legislature didn't like. So, I mean, we've built the rescission campaign is only, it wasn't in place at all at the beginning. And then we've slowly chipped away and became more and more aggressive. The last, ironically, where it really became more aggressive was at Count My Vote and the dislike that the legislature had for Count My Vote. So I guess this is living with the bed that they have made.
Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see.
The other thing that might be in play, it's probably still too far off. They're going to count and verify signatures till the 9th, but Nate Bluen's Senate district is higher than I thought it would be. I'm trying to remember the number, but I want to say they're at about 87%. So they would need hundreds more verified signatures, but his district may get close by the time they get done counting here. So
interesting.
Yeah.
And what do you think of Congressman Moore? I mean, kind of playing it both ways.
Yeah, this is interesting because he was one of the Republicans who headed up the Better Boundaries. And so a lot of people are like, you've made your bed, sleep in it, you need to run in this district. But he actually came out with a video that was posted online yesterday telling Better Boundaries to stop, take a chill pill, stop fighting to get the signatures off, let this play out. And Mara, he says, let the voters decide in November and stop with this effort. Meanwhile, there's also an appeal right now to the governor's office with a new lawsuit saying that Better Boundaries is going against state law by paying to have people have their signatures removed because they're paying for the return stamped envelope to get returned to them.
Yeah, I mean, what becomes interesting is there's no longer, I'm hesitant to say there's a Republican strategy because there's a bunch of different Republicans running very different strategies, including
This is what we say. The Republican Party is so big, you got 3 or 4 caucuses.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, I'm assuming Blake Moore is sort of been pounded a little by the proper GOP party and wants to throw them a bone, but also probably wants to stay out of the way of the legislature is by and large not pushing the initiative. I'm not saying they disagree with it, but they are not the organizers of the initiative. Yeah. They are certainly the organizers of the lawsuits that have failed but still have an on-ramp. And then the GOP has also been the ones who want to litigate the conditions of the campaign. They're on really thin ice because they have also had trouble. And they're sort of, I think I would say of the party, they're really wanting their cake and eating it too. They're being very aggressive about their signature gathering, but they're also complaining that it's an inducement when you mail something to somebody. So
you've run these before. Do you believe that from what you know that it's legal that they can be sending these pre-stamped envelopes for them to mail back?
When I read election law, I do not think that's the definition of inducement. Sending something, a speech, which is what the point of the stamp is. The stamp is so that I can communicate with you. I do not think that is bribing you to do what I want. And also remember, in the inducement to take your name off, we have regulations about how I can ask you to take your name off. So they're not lying in their proposal for you to take their name off. So it'll have to stand the test. But as I understand election law, I don't think paying to communicate with you is bribing or inducing you to vote the way I want you to.
Well, and I want to go back to something Mara said. The legislature is also responding to a lot of lawsuits. So
Right.
they're not initiating all of them.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
What do you think? Are the stamps a problem? As a Republican, are you saying, okay, this is a problem, this is a step too far with them trying to remove the signatures?
I haven't looked specifically at the law on this matter,
So we'll have to wait and see what happens. Well, speaking of the law, there are so many other things happening. After we spoke last Friday, we were waiting for rulings to come in from the federal district court, also the Utah Supreme Court. And at this point, both judges and the decisions came down that they're throwing back these cases. They're not going to deal with it. And so unless there was like a really, really 11th hour filed to the Supreme Court, it seems to me like this is going to be over and done with. And the 2026 election will have this new D1 heavily leaning Democratic seat, whether people like it or not. Is that what you feel?
I think the clock's running out. I think one of the key things is the Utah Supreme Court ruling is not going to mend any kind of fences with the legislature, because the legislature felt like the district court judge stalled and didn't finalize her order, so they couldn't appeal it. And then to be told by the Utah Supreme Court, oh, you missed your window because you were too late appealing it, when they were frustrated because the district judge left it in a situation that they felt like they couldn't appeal it until her order was final. And so they're going to feel like they got, duped on both sides.
yeah, I think they're feeling that way anyway, even though despite the fact that the district court actually did go out of her way to say, y'all can be appealing. You all don't have to wait until all of the judgments are final. So I don't know if it's their legal counsel who have given them bad advice. I don't know if it's the fact that they're so resistant to being engaged in this process or not. But it certainly does look like they're not out of legal choices, but we're certainly out of time. And I think the voters, one of the key ingredients to the district court ruling was to evoke a 2006 principle, which says you get too close to the elections and one should settle the ballot, right? It's the Percival principle. And I think that was smart for them to say, hey, listen, this ruling is because we're at a point in which we've started the election process. Voters need to feel confident about who they're voting for at this time. And I think that that's the position that we're in for this ballot.
Some will say Nate Bluin winning in that Democratic seat is the best thing for the Republican Party. It will show.
He would be fun to run against for Republicans,
It's
I
an
think.
interesting
and
strategy.
it will say, okay, he goes back there and doesn't get anything done and potentially, causes certain antics to take place. And Republicans in Utah say, see, that was our concern.
Does he have name ID where he can win? I feel like Ben McAdams still has the name ID to win that
Yeah,
seat.
I mean, head-to-heads right now are showing Nate Blumen doing better. If you look at where the money is going, it's going to Ben McAdams. So it depends on what you're looking for at this moment in time. I think for me, this moment in time, I'm looking at money.
And at this point, Ben's saying, show me the money.
Yeah, and so I think that's going to be the key. The other thing
So wait, you said Ben's ahead in the money?
Yeah.
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
But Nate's doing really well, and social media is strong. And the question will be, if I were a Republican, I would be funding the Blumen campaign, I think. But I think that would make for an interesting test. The other thing I'm going to throw into the mix of the question of constitutionality and ballot measures and who should be making what decisions and what's in place. I just want to point out, to add more confusion to it, that
Please do.
since 2010,
I am so confused.
I know. In the last 10 years, the last sort of 12 years, let's say, the legislature, the state legislature, has placed 29 times on our ballot a request to amend our Constitution. And it
Over what period of time? 29 over?
Since 2010.
Okay.
Since 2010, with 5 or 6 of them being in the last 2 years.
So mine didn't count. Mine was a
yours don't
little bit
count.
earlier.
Well, and having to do with the discussion we're having now about ballot measures. 4 or 5 of them, frankly, are around this same. If you want to log
Mine
those
was
by
tax
category.
policy.
But I just want to bring that up because it should be a part of your deliberation when the legislature tells you with some amount of umbrage that it's fixed and how dare they and these are the roles. Yet and they insist that ballot measures are bad for us because we're somehow unable to make these decisions. And yet 29 times the state legislature has asked us to amend the Constitution, essentially on their behalf. We have not passed them all, but we have passed the vast majority of them. I think there's only 2 or 3 that haven't made it through to the end of the line. So factor that in when you're talking about initiatives. I think we're going to have 3 to 5 questions on our ballot this year. We don't know the answer because there are several questions still being deliberated at the legislature, but it's a big stinking deal to change our state constitution, and we should be reading those as carefully or more carefully than we are reading some of the other questions on our ballot.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes education's the problem because whoever's running it isn't
no one
educating
pays for
people.
those campaigns. Yeah.
I just remember when I ran my constitutional amendment on some tax changes, people were like, you're never going to amend the Constitution. I even got the Salt Lake Tribune to write an op-ed in favor of it. And people were stunned.
It's interesting. We don't disapprove of constitutional amendments very much.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're okay changing it. It feels different on a state level, maybe. My question before we move on from this race is we have all the Republicans who are moving up close to a deadline where they have to decide what district they're running into. I want to know if you guys are hearing behind the scenes what's happening. I'm hearing rumors of who's running where and why and who might not be running.
And what are those rumors?
I want to hear your rumors first.
I'm not hearing that many rumors.
You don't hear rumors?
Not right now. Not for those.
Okay.
I'll throw in, but they are rumors. Like this has, do not
Nothing
read
solid.
anything I'm about
Yes.
to say as meritus. But I'm hearing that the negotiation may look at a retirement from Burgess Owens.
That's what I've been hearing too, and I think they're probably looking at him saying, "You're the oldest, let the younger ones go." But
And the
if
rumor
you're not
was
ready
he
to,
was only running one more time.
yeah,
Yeah,
but,
and he had sort of stated that for his career.
but the interesting thing is he was part of that last lawsuit that was filed that was just struck down with Celeste Malloy, which says he's still got skin in the game too. Which, if you don't want to be done, you don't want to be done. So it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. So
Blake Moore, I think, somewhat officially announced I'm in 2,
Right.
which is up northern Utah.
Which was smart to sort of just
yeah, and the
Which
people
was
who
largely
dub
just-
two right
Yeah.
away.
and the people who are mad at him right now are saying, "No, your district's 1. You made your bed. You've got to sleep in District 1." And
And you live in 1.
run and
therefore,
lose. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see once all those filings happen.
Are
Meanwhile,
you seeing ads on TV?
no. Are
So
you
Congressman
seeing ads?
Kennedy is just blasting the streaming media where I live on, and they're paid for official. They're official. They're not campaign ads.
Interesting.
They're paid for by Congress.
Interesting.
They look like campaign ads, but they don't quite cross that line. And it's, here's the job I'm doing for you, and here's my contact information in Congress. But there's like, I swear, 8 different versions of ads, and they're playing like every 5 minutes.
Interesting. It's a smart move. I hate to admit this, but the way TV stations work when we're doing our newscast, I think I've talked about this before, it's black and silence in between, so we can concentrate on the newscast. So a lot of times I miss out on those commercials that are rolling when I'm at work, and I don't get bombarded like people at home. So I need to turn on the TV on my desk and see what's going on because I did not realize those ads were running. But I guess it's good for news stations because the last couple cycles, there's just been zero money spent in the state of Utah. So anyhow,
Interesting.
yeah, so this will be fun.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the legislative session because they're still doing their work. There's way more than 1,000 bills that have been introduced, I believe, into the actual system. We're at 606 now. Representative Clancy had a bill that was entered in today. Senator Todd Weiler.
So there are more than 600 House bills,
But here's what
which
I
is
find.
like the first time in history. And yeah,
Yeah, it's seems like a bazillion to me.
I want to add more numbers because I
Please
thought
do.
this was super fun. So this is as of last night.
Okay.
So who even knows where we are today? But as of last night, so there were 1,020 bills in recording.
That is a lot.
So total introduced, that was the 1,020. Signed into law so far is 143. Failed or dead, that's a political term, not an official term.
it's
So
never really
dead.
dead until sign a
But
die.
the
Not
dead,
dead yet.
in my count, the dead was either voted down, tabled, or held in committee. And this was among a lobbyist chat. So we were like, these are dead. There were 92 of those, which meant that with 6 working days left, there were 785 bills still to be discussed and deliberated. And as John knows, so we're on 2-a-days. So we've got a couple of hours in the morning, a couple hours in the afternoon.
And last night they did in the evening.
And they did the evening. We'll do that Monday, Tuesday, probably Wednesday. It has an extended meeting time in the evening. Thursday, Friday, we'll probably go most of the day with some breaks.
And literally Friday usually starts 8 or 9 in the morning and runs.
Except technology has kind of ruined
midnight.
that, hasn't it? Do you remember the day where you just cover the clock and you'd
That's what I was asking.
No,
Do they still
that
do
was
that?
before my time.
Yeah.
Covering the clock was before my time.
I remember the covering the clock.
I came from, they watch the computer, and as soon as it hits midnight,
It shuts.
Chief clerk jumps up, basically says,
I
time
know.
out,
I
game over,
liked
done.
we don't know what time it is. What are you talking about?
Yeah, nobody wears watches that day. They cover the clock. There's
Yeah.
nobody's got a cell
What do you
phone to
mean?
tell
It's,
them.
it's May.
Right. I feel like they would be there past May at this point with how many bills they have. I want to talk about a few things. Senator Todd Weiler on social media announcing that SB 308, the judicial district amendments, will not move forward during the 2026 legislative session. There's been a lot of movement judicially on this. This one's paused. Something that you expected to see, Mara, or was this a nice bow out from the senator?
I think this is a good bow out. I think this needs more deliberation. I think Todd Weiler is deliberative and experienced.
Yeah, I mean, I think what he was trying to do was some efficiency in the court, some consolidation, but probably moving too fast for various parties. And so calling time out and saying, we'll work on it in the interim and come back.
All right. I appreciate a little timeout. HB 88.
Do you like to sit in the corner with a little hat on? No.
Yes, I would. HB 88, the immigrant services funding was circled. This is the Trevor Lee bill where he was looking to not only withhold services from people who were in the country in the state illegally, but also make it so that if you were serving people, you could be held accountable too, which I think was a step too far for a lot of people, hearing that you could even find yourself in legal trouble for feeding someone that was hungry if they somehow were not legally here in the state.
Yeah, there was various concerns, confusion about it. I'm going to say it's usually pretty rare to have a debate and then circle the bill.
Yeah.
You usually have a debate and you vote it up or down. And this was one where they had a debate. Lots of passion and emotion was expressed. And then a motion was made to circle the bill. And
to the body's credit, also, this was poorly drafted legislation. So some of the dilemma was more about poor drafting. I'm not talking about the legal minds that did
not
it.
the
I'm
attorneys
talking
that are
about
drafting, but
the concepts and how they were
trying to
comporting
articulate
with
it.
others. And I really appreciated that the body said this is not prime time. There are tons of unintended consequences. That was a lot of the debate. So I thought that ended up being good.
Well,
So
if you
did
end
this
up-
actually go to debate because they wanted this for, I guess, pomp and circumstance reasons for the Republican base to see we're discussing it and then circled it? Or why do you think it actually went to the floor if there was going to be no up or down vote?
I think it went to the floor because it was just going through normal process. It went through committee. It came to the floor. Folks are ready to debate the thing. I think folks assumed that there was going to be a vote on it one way or the other. And I think they just got into it, and the kind thing to do was just circle it rather than put a stake through the heart of it.
Do you want to bet on whether it comes back and gets uncircled? Is that the correct
I'll bet
term?
on that. Yeah, it's not going.
It's not going to happen. All right. Well, while we're betting,
But watch for next session.
For
next
sure,
session.
this issue is not over. And the speaker has already told us, I mean, again, what was that? 783 bills?
Yeah.
In 6 days. So they're either going to go to breakneck speed. I mean, I watched this afternoon, they rejected 2 amendments from the Senate. Already the House and Senate are rejecting each other's amendments. So the question will be, how do you sift and get your bill to even be considered? Now, we'll start to fly. There'll be a bunch of almost unanimous, pretty close to unanimous bills that'll start to fly
I mean, the last day or two when I
Yeah.
ran the dais on behalf of the speaker, it was one of those things. Our vote is going to be open for 30 seconds.
That's right.
It's basically stay on the floor because we are debating and we are voting and we are moving on. Don't walk away.
that 30 seconds is fast. That's like you're auctioning off hogs, out there yelling.
I'd immediately open the vote and then start calling names of people that hadn't voted yet.
You were like, you, and you are not listening. I want to talk about the prediction markets, which are getting a lot of attention on social media, getting attention from the governor.
What
But
are
right
the
now,
odds?
I know, what are the odds in this one? The interesting thing is I hadn't really thought a ton about it until this conversation came up. I see Polymarket and everything else show up in my feed on social media, and it's kind of interesting to watch whether it's elections or we're going to war or Bitcoin going up or down.
What topic is Heidi Hatch going to talk on the news next?
You just see them going on and you're like, oh, that's an interesting gauge of where the American people are. But this is where people are actually putting their money, which is interesting. And I think a lot of Utahns are getting sucked into this too. And Mara, we don't allow gambling in the state of Utah,
Right.
but right now, because this is sort of on a federal level, everyone can do it. I've seen people on their phones doing it. Is this something we should be concerned about, or waste your money if you want to?
So I'm going to be old school. I might be, I don't know what I'm typecasting here, but I don't mind on this whole genre of bills that Utah remains a peculiar people. I sort of like that early looks like the AG and the governor's office are like, we don't know that this is really a great means. What the legal path is, as you say, to object to things that aren't properly defined in a category that we already have a ton of law in, and the fact that they are by and large allowed at a federal level will be interesting.
And on an app, so how do you stop that?
We're also fighting the fight on social media right now.
Yeah.
We are leading out against the White House and on behalf of a lot of people, and we are in an era in which technology is defining us in a different way than we ever have. I love that Utah is pushing back and saying, no, we need additional definitions on these things. And I think this habit forming is really a conversation worth having, much like our social media conversation is.
Are you on the poly markets? Are you, okay, we're going to strike Iran. We're going to move in more forces to Iran. Where are you at on this?
There you go. Unfortunately, we're going to strike Iran, but
All right.
when and how, I don't know.
Another
But I
story.
think it's-
Well, people are betting on that too.
But on this topic, really, what it's coming down to is that edge right there. Is it a game of chance? Is it gambling, or is it a game of skill? You see this with fantasy sports. You see it with prediction markets, and that's really the crux of this thing: is game of chance, illegal in Utah. Game of skill, legal in Utah. What is it?
Yeah.
I guess there may be some skill to this. I'm not a gambler. I learned the lesson once when somebody gave me a $100 chip and I put it down on the table because of peer pressure and I lost $100 and I was like, oh, I could have had that $100. So I'm not into this.
And the stories I'm hearing is lots of college age kids are taking their tuition money or other monies and predicting or wagering whatever it might be and losing it and in massive amounts. And
which is scary to think about.
It's becoming addictive to them to.
And yet I'll disagree with myself. And I mean, we need a shout out to our own free rights and our ability to make the decisions that we're making.
God-given right to be stupid.
Yeah, this is. And so I do
God
find
bless America.
some complexity in it, but I don't mind that Utah is going to take a more layered approach to having this discussion.
Speaking of layers, this is an added layer, another bill I want to talk about, DUI bill HB 423. This is in the Senate Judiciary Committee, Law Enforcement and Criminal Justice. This one is just another one added to the layers that Representative Steve Ellison's been working on with the family of Eli Mitchell, the 13-year-old who was hit and killed almost 4 years ago by a repeat drunk driver. And what they're trying to do is trying to make it so there is, I guess, a set amount of time that you would have to spend in prison if you were in a DUI, auto homicide, second-degree felony, 5 to 15 years in prison. Because right now you can actually get out on parole as soon as a year after because there's not these mandatory sentences. So I think they're looking at a lot of different ways to maybe keep people from being in an incident where it's a hit, run, you leave. Mara, do you think this helps? We've talked about deterrence before, and if there's any ability to move the bar and help with these DUI deaths in our state, or is this just one more law that if you're drunk, you're not thinking about?
It's hard to comment on it because when you see the results of DUI, they're devastating.
Yeah.
And so there's no doubt about the impropriety, the poor decision making. On the question of does punishment work? I don't think it does. I think education works more. It's not to say you don't need punishment. On a really universal level, and I did not follow the committee debate on this bill, I will say as a general level, I'm not a huge fan of mandatory minimums. I do like, it's not popular in Utah right now to say, but I want the discretion of the judiciary to come into the individual cases. And mandatory minimums take away that discretion. So I don't know about this specific bill because I didn't listen to the debate. But as a general rule, I am one who wants discretion for the judge in what they're doing. I'm completely okay with the punishment for DUI, particularly when it's repetitive, being pretty harsh, and so that the judge would have the discretion to be really harsh about the sentencing structure to that. It makes sense. I think that fits the crime, if you will, but I do get concerned from a process point of view.
Yeah, and I think that's the hard part is we're looking at that because I think that when you see states that have these mandatory minimums, sometimes you see someone who may have been with drugs, they weren't selling drugs, they end up with that mandatory minimum, spending prison time, a long time. It's hard to get their life back on track. And then the other end, you have someone like this that's a repeat DUI offender. They've taken a life and they could possibly get out on parole really soon. So you can see both sides of it where families are torn, sick to their stomachs about someone leaving and being able to get out so soon. And the other hand, you look at people people whose lives might be ruined over one poor choice or a couple poor choices.
Yeah, this is one of those things the legislature struggles with. We want safe streets. This is what the public demands. This is what we all expect. And you get folks that are addicted, and they, for whatever reason, make these choices, engage in these activities, and harm and kill individuals, and it's horrific. And the legislature wants to solve it, and there's no easy answer. There's not an easy answer. Do you lock them up? How long do you lock them up? Do you not? Do you give treatment? All these type of things. How do you deal with that? Because some of the problem is repeat offenders, but I'm going to say part of the problem is first-time offenders.
Right.
And we don't want first-time offenders on the road either. We don't drink and drive. Have a designated. We've been talking about this for decades.
Yeah.
And it's still something, even though Utah has the lowest drinking rates in the nation, we still struggle with this problem.
We're in the day and age, though. I'm like, you've got Uber, you can call your mom. There's so many options. Just don't drink and drive. But we'll be watching that as it goes through the legislature in the last few days to see if it actually passes through. This is an interesting one to me because there's been so many complaints right now about the lieutenant governor who's in charge of their own office, but also in charge of watching the elections for their own office. There's a new bill for Secretary of State, which would be in charge of our elections as opposed to the lieutenant governor. Does this solve the problem, or is it just a Secretary of State who'd also be in charge of their own election too, and then people are like, wait.
So in the proposal, we used to have a Secretary of State. Mid-'70s, we went to a lieutenant governor. I've suggested for quite a while that lieutenant governor really wants to focus on being governor and not running the elections. I'm not saying anything about Lieutenant Governor Henderson, but I'm saying some predecessors were more focused on the next step to governor rather than overseeing the elections. In this bill, it would be going back to Secretary of State, would be putting it on the ballot to see if we want to amend the Constitution accordingly to the previous discussion. But then what it would do is in statute would say, in an election where the Secretary of State is up, then another elected official, the Lieutenant Governor, would oversee that election to try and avoid the conflict of interest or perceived conflict of interest.
I am not buying this at all yet. I may change my mind, but right now I'm kind of dug in on not buying it. I think this is a solution looking for a problem. I think that this is based on whispers of the ballot isn't safe and which have been, how many audits do we need to say that our ballot is doing
4 independent
great?
Audits, yeah.
Now I'm going to old school myself.
I'll disclose I did one of those.
Right, exactly. But I think there's not a problem. And I am getting more
there are
and more.
issues, but they don't rise to the level of altering the outcome of the election.
There are issues in every local, public, and private enterprise. And I will also say that I think this pretty blatantly inserts politics into campaigning. I am now on, I'm on my 4th or 5th election director, and they are buttoned up. I'm on my 6th or 7th LG, and they're buttoned up, and we have walls in between those offices. And I am often working with people who are in a different party than I am and in a different administration and who have sometimes been punitive to the issues I've worked on. And I, by and large, have a great deal of trust with the elections offices that have lived under Republican LGs. This is a left of center person telling you that I don't know where the fire is. I don't think there is one. I think this is punishment about Deidre Henderson, who has stood up several times to legislative bullying, and they don't like to be stood up to, as we've established. And I think that this is just the other. I'm getting a little bit chippy about Republicans in Utah staking out the territory of small government. I think that threw past, like y'all blew past that a couple sessions ago. Every time you have a conflict, or not you, the royal you, we don't solve conflicts by making government bigger. That's never been the solution. So I'm really self-conscious of the fact that I am now having to hold down the small government. It's not my usual territory, but I'm going to start throwing down that apparently I'm a small government gal. I think there is no merit to this. And I think anyone who has worked with our elections offices in the past, be it clerks, one of the big things that Lieutenant Governor points out in this is, hey, who operationalizes elections are the county clerks. So you're just talking a repository, you're talking a place for petitions, you're talking absolutely about the data holder, all these things, but I have seen no indication that there are not checks and balances already in place under the lieutenant governor, under the separation of the elections office.
Well, and so one thing you're saying, one of the strengths of our system is highly decentralized.
Right.
And we've been over the last several years centralizing it more and more and more. And that, from my perspective, creates greater risk of whether it's hacking,
That's a good point.
foreign actors, bad actors in office, whatever it might be. The more you centralize it, the more risk you place on
Yeah.
a limited. So I like the highly decentralized.
Yeah,
And like I was saying, you're absolutely right. Too often we go after personalities and we do public policy based on personality rather than saying, okay, this is why this is a good policy or this is why this is a bad policy. Take the person out of it.
It
And
does
I-
feel like
yeah.
it's a Phil Lyman fight this right now. But when we were talking about that, you had an audit. And when the lieutenant governor's office was audited, it was by outside agencies. There was either 3 or 4, but none of them were the lieutenant governor auditing the lieutenant governor.
Right. Yeah. So my office of state auditor, we went and looked at elections. We looked at the signature path and how folks, specifically 3 statewide Republican candidates, got on the ballot to see whether we thought they got enough signatures and what are the weaknesses in that process. Simultaneously, the legislative auditor general came in to do a somewhat similar audit, but he was looking from a different perspective, and they did a different kind of sample set than we did. And what we found is those candidates appeared to statistically, it was very likely they got on the ballot based
Which
on the
also
error rate that
proved-
we saw.
Proved out that you can test the result of an election office under the attorney general with third-party sources.
Well,
And we have an audit.
And the timing to change this would have been back in April. That was the timing for people to contest. So the start of our audit was nothing in this will change the outcome because the chance to change it was back in April, and we released the first part in September. I think the second part was in December. The other thing that we did shortly after that, so we released that beginning of September. So it was mid-December or mid-September, the Attorney General's office approached and said, we're investigating folks that were engaged in collecting fraudulent or producing fraudulent signatures. Would you help us go through that? And I think we went through almost 300,000 signatures to identify the ones that we thought were high-risk gatherers and turn that over to the Attorney General's office so they could go do further research and prosecute bad actors that were collecting fraudulent
And
signatures.
that's also really important, the relationship between the lieutenant governor's elections office and the attorney general's office is a relationship. They don't prosecute or address. They discover and research, that they being the lieutenant governor / elections office. And if there is action to be taken, you will see that immediately given to the attorney general's office, as it should be. So there are other entities involved. As to my tolerance
and,
for
and, and the lieutenant governor had
Yeah.
turned over where she thought there was bad
Absolutely.
actors to the AG's office. We then helped them, and they then prosecuted.
And that exists right now. And I do often hear they can't audit themselves. To every legislator who's thinking that, let's apply that to legislative auditors then, because I love the notion of not being able to audit ourselves. I am for that if we get to apply that to the legislative office, who also is lined out on auditing based on politics.
Well, to be fair, they don't audit the legislature proper, so they audit other activities.
That's definitional, right?
No,
I mean,
it
they-
gets to, the independence really comes into you can't audit what you do as an executive, what your day in and day out kind of activities.
Right, but they audit those they appropriate, they
manage
audit those they regulate, they audit those they oversee.
But they're not management, and thus that's come. But I get your
That's
point.
that's sort of the
Yeah.
shield that they're using. But I'm saying the intent. Is,
Another audit right now, just yesterday, the U.S.
She is
Department of
thrilled
Justice,
talking
I know,
audits, y'all.
filed
Audits
a
are great.
federal lawsuit against Utah and 4 other states. The DOJ saying that accurate, well-maintained voter rolls are requisite for the election integrity the American people deserve. A lot of Republicans in the state say yes. Deidre Henderson, the lieutenant governor, needs to turn over our voter rolls. The lieutenant governor said we've turned over what we need to, but we're not turning over people's private information. Interestingly enough, with a lot of the Republicans that are saying, yes, turn it over, my question is, if this were a Biden DOJ, would you be saying the same thing
Oh, no,
if it were
not
not
a
a Trump
chance.
DOJ?
Not a chance.
Yeah.
Federal overreach, out of control, irresponsible, protect our privacy.
Yeah,
That's
I
what we'd
think
be
we've
saying if it
also-
were Biden.
I think 4 states have already come back with a ruling on it, in which, in the instance, they have ruled with the states who did not want to turn over those varieties of information. I see this being something that the lieutenant governor is likely to win.
Is there a good reason why it should be turned
No,
over?
No, never, ever. Don't let them turn over your data. It is entrusted. It is expressly written when you sign up to register as a voter. There are very specific demarks of when you, in fact, if you ever ask for a voter file, it will be, and this has been forever, your social security number does
stripped.
not nor should not be attached to your voter ID. This, you should always say no to this.
Right. I'm going to say there are some parts where some information is turned over to national databases for election, quote unquote, integrity excuses. I have concerns with even that.
Yeah. So when we talk about our voter ID, is that connected then to if you're filed as a Republican, a Democrat, and independent, and then that would be connected to your social security card and everything else?
The file, so it's a SQL, it's an active
Just
database.
think
It's
of it
not a flat database.
It's a database, and they've got your name, they've got your address, they've got your party affiliation, they've got other identifiers, driver's license number, for example. They've got what elections did you vote in, so they've got your voting history. They don't know how you voted, but they know which elections you cast a ballot in.
But the database that they live in and how this data is appended really matters. It's how you separate and put data back together. So it lives in a dimensional database in which don't think of it linearly, think of it 360. And so you can have this security of making sure that this is who this person is, which you actually need for all the John Does. Like you need to be able to differentiate.
And the John Dougals.
And the Dougals with the alls. You need to be able to figure out individuals who may have similar names and have similar addresses. You need that dimensionality, but you also need the ability to break the data into separate ways and not store that linearly. And we do a really good job of this.
All right, we will stay tuned.
I love databases.
Love a good database. Yes, good stuff. Looking at the national level, the SAVE Act has been a lot of talk from President Trump. It is something that Senator Lee started years ago. It looks like it's going to be stalled out in the Senate with 4 Republican senators, including our own from Utah, John Curtis, not wanting to end the filibuster to pass the SAVE Act. The filibuster is something that needles both sides, and
I'm going to say
be a
it's
problem.
not about ending the filibuster, it's changing the filibuster rules. I think he's fine ending the filibuster. As I understand it, he does not want to change the filibuster rules because he's afraid that will come back and bite the Republicans at some point in the future. And this has been the debate on and off.
Yeah.
You know, don't do this when we're in the majority just because we can, because when we're in the minority, we benefit from the filibuster rule.
Absolutely. Any reason you see to getting rid of this and saying, let's go for it? Because Democrats might be in control soon, Mara.
No,
and
I
you
think
could win.
it's one more. I mean, this is one more breaking down of a decorum law and laws that were, rules, I should say, that were put in place. So I appreciate that Curtis is saying, listen, don't give up what we want today for something in the long term, which has been the problem lately with Congress is we're doing what's in front of us instead of doing what's good for us for decades.
So what if I want a pony really bad right now?
I know.
So that's the question.
We're living in a sugar world.
Yes,
Well,
we are.
and one of the key things is I think we all want integrity in our elections. There's some skepticism, though, with the federal government, regardless of which party's in control. How much do we really want to trust them and empower them in the elections? And yes, the Constitution allows Congress some authority when it comes to time, place, manner of federal elections. But that's where it's like, okay, we're walking an interesting tightrope when we're trying to say this is really for election integrity when, you know.
Are you in favor of IDs for voting?
I'm in favor of Americans proving that they're citizens. I'm concerned when a driver's license or a passport is the only means to do it, because you can think of certain disfavored minorities that are citizens that a government may say, I don't want to issue that ID to you. And so that causes me a concern. But I do think it's important that voters prove that they're citizens to be able to vote.
All
I
right.
think when they prove, though, matters and how they prove matters, and that's part of the discussion. The simplicity, and when we keep quoting that most Americans want ID, I think that's true. When you have a binary choice of saying, do you want someone to prove who you are? Yeah. But when I start telling you about the 89-year-old woman who doesn't have an ID anymore, but she wants to vote and has voted in America, when you talk about rural people, when you talk about single moms, and then people say, well, wait a minute, I also want them to be able to go to the ballot. And if at one point in the process they have proven out that they can and should register. And again, this is virtue signaling in a way that we don't have a problem in Utah, but we are going to make it harder for people to vote. And in my opinion, that's never the goal.
One vote that might be easier in Congress right now is something that Senator Mike Lee is working on with Representative Celeste Malloy, and this would move to overturn Biden-era grand staircase plans to where it was put in place from 2020. It's fairly complicated, but the concept behind this is that we used to have government agencies making rules, which are essentially laws. And Celeste Malloy won a small battle in the step where they could take this to Congress. Once they have this officially on the books next week, they would have 60 days to vote on this. All they would need is a simple majority to say that Congress gets to have a say in this, and this can't just be a rule made by an administration. You sound excited by this. So this would take away...
Well, part of the dynamic I have is the federal government's excessive control of public lands in Utah. So I've got that. So you throw in congressional review that lets Congress, basically repeal what an agency has done. I think that's good. I think Congress should be more involved. Agencies should be less involved. I think we've empowered them too much. And so I think this is a good step.
Does it make it more permanent so we're not flopping back and forth? The GAO said that, yes, they can look at this, and you're having Congress make a decision of whether something stays. Because sometimes we're seeing between presidents back and forth here in Utah and other states as well.
Executive order of the day.
Yeah.
So this is attempting to overturn hundreds of stakeholders who have spent thousands of hours on a management plan. They are closest to the plan. They know this area. These people involve Native Americans. They involve ranchers and users and extractors and mineral people and environmentalists over decades who have had complicated discussions about how and when to use this land. And Mike Lee wants to disregard all those local conversations to virtue tilt on a lands issue that I think is interesting and worth the discussion of who should control our land. But you've got to separate policy, practice, and politics on this. And to overturn the management plan would be devastating to the Republicans and Democrats and conservatives and liberals and environmentalists and Indians and users and oil companies who have spent decades on Grand Staircase Escalante. One of the things we know about this area is how important this is to the United States of America, how unique it is and how special it is. And to involve this in headline about going back and forth. So while I don't disagree maybe with the headlines, what's getting lost in this is a good management plan that didn't come from Republicans and Democrats, didn't come from liberals and conservatives. It came from everybody. It's not perfect. It will continue to change. These are really, really, really tough issues when it comes to land management. But we've had a lot of good people, namely Bob Bennett, and I'm going to quote him because this is how far back these management plans have been discussed. And I think we have to separate the issue on, yes, GAO has decided that
congressional review
unlegislated, people who weren't elected don't get to make all of the decisions. That's one part of it. Then we've got this federal land discussion, who gets to own and operate. But on the wayside, don't let these substantive management plans be treated politically when you have incredible buy-in from a lot of stakeholders.
Well, remember, this is not going back to Bill Clinton's time and everything in between. This is about the Biden-era regulations and rolling
They're
those
built
back.
on each other. I mean, for all the.
So the world will not end if we roll back to what we had before.
If we change this management plan significantly, it is so complicated and so bought into all the user groups that it will.
So we're not changing the plan. We're repealing the Biden-era regulations and going back to what the previous plan was.
If you read part of what they're trying to do, but if you're following what Mike Lee is intending to do, and which is the question. So
there's this issue, and
Senator
there's the broader
Lee
thing of what he'd like to do.
Right.
And there's this specific issue.
But I think that we have to watch on this, whether they're unintended or intended consequences. We've got a lot of players in Utah who have come to the table with really good intentions for decades. And I think Senator Lee's disregard for these folks in his overall goals to be liked by President Trump should not be bought into during this.
I don't think this has anything to do with being liked by President Trump. This has to do with delivering for a lot of Utahns who support this issue.
Yeah, that's not how I see this issue.
All right, we're going to see how this plays out. They don't have a lot of time to do it. I think once this permanently gets filed, they've got 60 days to make a decision on it. So we will have an answer on that. Anything you guys are watching in this final week that you want us to keep our eyes on the ball here with the legislative session?
I'm gonna tell the truth and tell you that I'm on vacation next week.
I love that.
Really?
Yeah. So I know.
Wow.
It's
You're going to watch it remote?
No, it was a conflict. It was my daughter's spring break, and in those moments
YOLO.
in time. So yeah, I will be attached to my phone. I'm bringing my laptop. It's not a week where I can completely disconnect, but I'm not going to be real.
Someplace
time.
warm at least.
New Orleans.
Okay.
Warmer.
That'll be fun.
Yeah.
All right. You'll be engaged anxiously here in this last week.
I'll especially be watching the bill that tweaks how we deal with billing in the Attorney General's office. So, some of those little details
The
that don't
nerdy
draw
stuff.
attention.
Yes, I know. Those things that matter as well. I, like Mara, I'm going to be out of town for the last few days of the session as well. So we are actually not going to have a podcast next Friday. But the following week, you can look forward to us digging into all those bills that pass in the final days, which probably will be a lot of them. And Utah GOP Chair Rob Axton is going to come in as well and discuss how things ended up with the signatures. I think they'll still have a few more weeks left to take their names off at that point, but their end of the deal will be done by then. So lots of
And
exciting
if you
things
miss
to talk
listen
about.
to us again.
Absolutely. Just hit
This
rewind
episode.
and listen again. Thank you so much for listening. Tell your friends about us. Thank you both for your time and being here today. And we will keep discussing the hard issues that matter here to Utahns.